with Frank Basa from Cobalt Canada Works. Before we get started, what's your symbol? What exchange are you on?
The symbol is CCW. We're on a TSX venture.
Give me a little history of the company, because I think people are going to want to know that before we start talking about what it is that you're doing, because what you're doing is so fascinating.
The company itself, what we're really about is actually taking, and this is what we do. We take what we call the stress asset, which was actually the Castle Mine, a former high-grade silver cobalt producer, and we take a distressed asset and we put them together, fund it, and we develop the asset. And in this case, what we're trying to do, we're going a little further than just a simple exploration company. We're trying to become a producer, and we do have this ability to produce a product that a battery market is looking for.
And cobalt from Canada.
That's right. So that's why we said Canada Cobalt Works, and it works in Canada.
Right. Well, and I think that when we take a look at the global market on cobalt, so much of it we know comes from Africa. Yep. And there are people who have issues with the way in which that jurisdiction manages itself and with child labor. And so, you know, we bring Canadian standards into this. It increases the value of the product from an end user's perspective.
Yeah, no, I tell you, you're right about that, because we went to Asia. They actually met with people in the automotive industry in Japan, and one of the main criteria they asked us, you know, where's your cobalt come from and how it's produced?
Yes.
It has to be an environmental green process to produce the cobalt.
So how do you ensure them that is what you're doing, that you've got an environmentally sound structure and process?
Well, what we do is we actually invite them. To come and see us, and you know, of course, you know, they see the mines on location. That's in Northern Ontario, and of course, the work is being done by SGS. SGS is a global group in Lakefield, so everything's being done in Canada. So they're very comfortable with that, and of course, they've been working with us very closely for over a year and a half. And very nice. Actually, nice to work with them. Actually, we're working with the Chinese and the Japanese, and now with the Germans as well.
Wow. So Castle Mine. Tell me what's the status of that site right now?
The Castle Mine was, I used to work for Agnico Eagle Mines in the Cobalt Camp, and the Castle Mine, when I was there, I was a metallurgical engineer. For the 6 years I was there, that was our highest grade mine in silver and cobalt. And you know, the market collapsed, the silver market collapsed, so all the mines got shut down. Then the president of Agnico Eagle passed away, and the new management let it go, and we picked it up for $15,000.
Excuse me?
I could use my credit card, you know, to buy it and get air miles, but it was $50,000, and of course this was very advanced. It had, of course, S3 shafts, but the critical thing here was the adder. To be able to access the underground, to really develop any assets in the cobalt camp, there's a lot of cobalt in the cobalt camp, but you got to go underground. And this is what I learned when I was with Agnico. And the reason I learned that was because I married a geologist that worked underground. So, you know, it came as a package.
You're a smart guy, yeah.
So anyways, and you know, once you're underground, you'll see it's kind of easy to find. When the cobalt oxidizes, it turns pink, and when you see pink in the vein, usually it's 0.5%, 1% or higher. And the cobalt grades, you know, if you look at the results, you'll notice very rarely is it below 1%, and usually goes 2-3% or even double digit. And of course, there's still a lot of silver. So the camp was actually called the Cobalt Camp. The town was called Cobalt. But they mined the cobalt veins, and actually when I was there, they only recovered the silver and threw the cobalt away.
They threw it away? Because they had no idea what its future use was.
No, it was, they just threw it away. So I showed up. I was fairly young, and I thought I was pretty smart, which I wasn't. You know, as older you get a little smarter. And we went and dug it up out of the bush, and at that time, it was worth, and this was early 80s, the things they threw away in cobalt was worth $52 million.
You dug up what they threw away.
Well, I didn't dig it up, but I had the company dig it up. We bought a building, we pushed it all in with a bulldozer, and this was early 80s, was $52 million worth of cobalt.
Wow.
And then we developed a process to separate it, and at that time we were going to make what we call a cobalt carbonate for cattle feed. And of course, like I said, you know, everything then, you know, the price of silver collapsed, everything went out the door, and you know, a lot of the assets were let go, and like fortunate for us, we picked it up. And so we had great success at the Castle Mine. We're one of the first in the camp to be underground, one of the first to drill underground. We've taken bulk samples from underground. We've actually produced cobalt sulfate for the battery market from the underground material using our process called a Re-2OX process. So we're most advanced people probably in the cobalt camp, probably in North America. We're going a little ahead of ourselves, so we're actually producing the product targeting client specific. In other words, a lot of these people come back with a very specific grade. Originally, we're just going to produce cobalt sulfate, and now they're looking also at nickel sulfate from us, manganese sulfate. So it's kind of 3 products they want from us now. So we're moving in that direction, and at the same time, exploration, dewatering. We're also going through a permitting process to put a 600 ton per day mill on the property, and hopefully in 2 years' time, we'll be at a stage where we might be able to produce product for the end user. 2 years. We're targeting that.
Wow.
Well,
and you're already working on shoring up some of those supply agreements.
Yeah, let's just say there's more buyers than sellers, and they've been very nice to us. I mean, very, very, very supportive. I tell you, really supportive, to the point that they're interested in financing us, and actually they want a secure supply that's conflict-free.
Right. So you talk about your process, this hydrometallurgical process.
Yeah.
Tell us about it, because you have developed it, and it becomes proprietary technology for you, which gives you another advantage, doesn't it?
The process was designed out of necessity. Basically, a lot of the stuff globally, including our ore, has a lot of arsenic. The smelters can't take it, and so we developed a process which removes the arsenic. So, when we originally wanted to show the world we can do something really tough, we created a concentrate that had 50% arsenic in it. And then we subjected it to this Re-2OX process, and sure enough, all the arsenic came out, and also all the cobalt came out, and we produced this cobalt sulfate. At that time, they wanted 21% cobalt grade and cobalt sulfate. We produced it as 22.6%, so we exceeded criteria. So immediately, when the potential buyers saw that last year in November, they said, okay, now we need nickel and also manganese. It says, okay, we'll work on it.
Yeah.
So we're showing the world that we can do it before we even have a resource. So, like I said, we're a little ahead of the game, but what we're trying to do what we call real time. We're doing the exploration, the development, the permitting for a mill now, and hopefully within 2 years' time, everything lines up, and there's a mine, there's a mill, we have a buyer.
So if that were your entire story, I'd say that's pretty good, but it's not, because you're also mining used computers and cell phones because of this process that you have.
Actually, that's interesting. Again, we traveled the world, and we're all over Europe, and it was interesting. We tried it. We thought, okay, they came to us, we tried it, and we also talked with the Asians, the automotive sector in Japan, and they all came to us because they don't want most of the cobalt that's recovered from the lithium-ion batteries goes to a smelter. They don't want you to burn it. They want to be ethically, environmentally. Yeah, we use recycled product. Nothing went into the air. So they came back. We did show them we can do it.
Yeah.
And our door is still open to all these people. What they're looking for is such a large scale facility that it's still hard to comprehend what they want out of us. It's massive what they want. Like, we never thought. It's not small quantities, like it's tens of thousands of. They're projecting to the future, of course, but now they're looking for a few thousand tons, but they're projecting the future, and what they're projecting is unbelievable. They come back with these lives of the batteries, which is 7 years or 14 years, depending on the battery. But the reason they're doing this is because there's not enough of cobalt. They're actually changing the cobalt formulation in the batteries. They're lowering the cobalt level, replacing it with nickel and manganese, because there's not enough cobalt. Even the ones coming out of DRC can't supply it. It's unbelievable.
Let's talk about why cobalt and lithium-ion batteries is such an important combination, because we know when the cobalt's not there, we've got a potentially explosive environment.
What I'm saying, if you lower the cobalt level in the lithium-ion battery, apparently becomes unstable, overheats, starts on fire. So there's a certain level they have to have, regardless. You can't just pull it out. We'll take the cobalt out. You can't.
Well, there had been a hope that they could do that, and they quickly went, okay, we can't do that. We got phones and computers catching on fire.
Like we spoke to the people, like in the automotive sector when they were in Japan, and basically they said, look, you take the cobalt out, it's unstable. The other thing is, the lower the cobalt level, less range. So they said, look, increase the cobalt level, everybody wants range. People want range with their vehicle.
And cobalt, it becomes that essential element.
They can't replace it. And they try to replace it. What they did was, we knew that a long time ago. Originally, it was only a cobalt, and there's nothing else, and lithium, Now they replace it with nickel and manganese and a few other formulations. But it comes to this, unless you have a certain amount of cobalt, it just doesn't work. And to create a new battery, this is the same thing. Like, we went there and said, look, Toshiba said, we have a battery that requires no cobalt. And it says, you're right, we know about it. The problem is, it takes 15 to 20 years to commercialize. So in other words, if you invented a new battery today, 15 to 20 years to commercialize.
Wow.
So that's why the lithium-ion battery won't go away.
And neither will the requirement for cobalt.
No. Actually, right now there's a critical shortage. People are not aware of it. Everybody thinks there's a lot of cobalt. There isn't. When we met with the Chinese people, we said, why you want to meet with us? Actually, they're really nice to us. They wined and dined us. We had so much food on the table. I mean, it was unbelievable. And I says, why are you talking to me? I mean, you have cobalt from the DRC at 0.5, 0.6% in your ore. He says, no, it's 0.1. He says, the cobalt isn't there. He said, who told you that? I said, well, it was in the media. He says, no, it's 0.1. He says, we want to work with you because, we're looking for cobalt actively. It was unbelievable.
So there's a tremendous amount of interest. From an investor's perspective, they're saying, okay, this sounds like a really good scenario to be in. What am I buying into now, and what's that going to look like in a year or two from now?
Well, I think we're looking at, like I said, a 2-year window. We're doing a lot of things. We're kind of being very dynamic. We keep on changing our direction. Originally, we're supposed to just drill, explore, resource. After we went to Asia, I said, well, I think we have to change the structure. And at that time, we also changed the name to Canada Cobalt Works because
Canada works as well in China. I know it's a valued name.
It really changed everything. I tell you, the stock went to 91 cents. We changed the name, and we changed direction. So we said, okay, we'll explore. We'll go underground. We'll produce product to show the world the process works, and we'll begin, the permitting process for the mill. I don't know if people are aware, but in Canada, first you have to do all those studies, which can take a year.
Yep.
Then you apply. It can take another year to get your permit. So it's 2 years. We won't have a resource. If we do a resource and it comes in a year or two, and then you go through that permitting process, it's 4 years. So what we're trying to do is we're going to take those 2 years of, permitting and whatever, put it all together, and we call it real time. So, the drilling, the test work, the evaluation, the product development, everything's done all at the same time, and we can squeeze that into a 2-year time frame.
Wow. So it'll be interesting. Will you come back and give us an update maybe next year and the year after?
Oh yeah, we will. We will. No, thank you very much.
Yeah, no, very interesting position that you're in, and the technology that you've developed.
It's a technology.
Yeah,
it's a technology.
Which I think is fundamentally important because, as you say, it meets environmental requirements that not only just in Canada, but your customers ultimately are going to want to know that this
requirements.
That's right.
Social license, they call it.
That's exactly what it is.
There's no such thing, but they call it a social license.
Well, because it's important to their brand. They want to be able to point to the fact that they've sourced from reliable and ethical sources. And so I think you're sitting in a very interesting position. Thanks for coming in and sharing this with us.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.